Welcome to the National Urban League Town Hall Reclaim Your Vote for Democracy. I'm Ed Gordon. We have a dynamic lineup of guests that will share their thoughts on why this election, the 2024, is the most important for keeping America's democracy. Tonight, we'll discuss why everyone should vote and what you need to make sure your voice is counted. First, we should note that this special was born from a conversation between Mark Morial, president and CEO of the National Urban League, and comedian and television personality Sheryl Underwood. At the end of that conversation, both agreed they needed to do something together. And tonight, that starts, and we're glad to have them both with us. Mark, welcome. I want to start with you.
Thank you.
National Urban League's Reclaim Your Vote campaign promotes voter registration, voter education, and voter activation. Tell us about the project.
Yeah, Ed, first of all, thank you. Thank Sheryl. Thank everyone who's joined us tonight. We had over 2,000 people registered to be with us. Thank you all very much. The Supreme Court in 2013 gutted the Voting Rights Act. And as a result of that, we've seen a surge, a tsunami, and an avalanche of legislation aimed at suppressing the Black vote and the vote of other marginalized communities. In 2016 and 2020, we saw foreign interference targeting Black communities, encouraging Black communities not to vote in those elections. Reclaim Your Vote is our response to voter suppression. Very quickly, we are encouraging everyone to have a plan to vote. It means, one, you must register to vote. Number two, you must educate yourself on where and how to vote. And then thirdly, for whom to vote in all elections. And then thirdly, you must activate yourself to execute that plan. Each of us needs our own voting plan. In some states, you can vote by mail. In some states, you can vote early. In some states, you can vote in person. In some states, you can only vote in person. Know your options. Choose now which one to exercise. A lot is at stake. We must seek to have the kind of turnout that we had in 2008, that we had in 2012, and that we had in legendary elections in the past, like Harold Washington's 1983 race for mayor of Chicago, and yours truly, Mark Morial's race in 1994 for mayor of New Orleans, when record turnout, especially record turnout in the Black community in all of those elections, made a difference. That's the challenge, Ed, for all of us tonight, to put that and accelerate that objective.
Sheryl, you and I have known each other a long, long time, and I know one of the things that you have always done is utilized your platform as a celebrity. But I know you want to make sure that people understand that they have their own individual platforms, and we all need to involve ourselves tonight.
Absolutely, Ed. And first of all, thank you, Urban Leaguers. Thank you, Mark Morial. Thank you, Urban League Board, for allowing us to coalesce and come together. We have to use what we know works. And thank you, Brother Mark Morial, because I was involved in that campaign to help Brother Harold Washington become Mayor Harold Washington. We cannot let people separate us. We must do what we know will get that vote out. For all of the new voters, they need to know, fill out the ballot. Make sure you sign it. See, they're going to be tossing back. Now, this is Sheryl Underwood talking. Don't call the Urban League, go, Sheryl said this. I'm telling you what I know because I go to both sides of the meetings. Voter suppression is real. We need to talk to each other. We need to put this in our media. There's more people watching Club Shay Shay than are ready and registered to vote. We got to mobilize this. We got to vote like our lives depend on it, because they do. And we know what to do. Okay, sororities, telephone tree. Fraternities, telephone tree. churches, we need to get together. There are a lot of us that are not with our families anymore that need somebody to help us get that vote out. We got to come together, not just our community, but we need to bring other communities together. If we don't overwhelmingly vote, something's going to happen where they're going to try to push it in a location that they know they got control over. So this is why this is important. We must leave this call fired up and ready to go to mobilize that vote and call into other states, other cities, because we got to vote up and down ballot. We got to exercise our rights to vote. If you leave any vote on the table, it's too close for comfort. We have to go out and vote. Was that too long, Ed? Somebody
No, it
give me
was
a
not,
sign
Cheryl.
and say,
I,
stop
I love
talking.
I love that you're fired out, but you bring up something I want to give to Mark. And Mark, I think is important. Cheryl talked about down ballot. One of the things that we're hearing, it's down to about 6 or 7 states for the Electoral College. But we need to make sure that even if you think your state is safe for the person that you're voting for, let's take Texas, for instance. That's going to be red. Probability there is very high. It's going to be a red presidential state. But for that down ballot vote, Democrats, for instance, could make a change there if numbers come out, to your point, in record numbers.
There is, Ed, in Texas, a competitive Senate race between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. The down ballot races for the Senate, control of the House of Representatives, with the possibility that Hakeem Jeffries could be speakers, is why we've got to vote down the ballot. In many places, the state legislature is up for grabs. Mayoral races, clerk of court races, councilmanic races, county commission races, school board races. We've got to exercise our power completely and fully up and down the ballot. That's why you need a plan. Bring something right down. Don't forget, educate yourself. Don't walk into the ballot and say, oops, I don't know because I haven't heard and I haven't prepared. Black America and all of our friends and allies, we need to maximize our voice and our power in this election cycle. So have a plan. That's what's important. And up and down the ballot, Ed, all the way.
Sure, you've been very astute politically for many years, and you were out here doing before it became kind of in vogue. What are you telling people who are telling you that they may not vote? They don't see it as important. They don't see it as making a real difference in their life.
Well, first thing I try to do is ask them why. Why would you do this? And for everybody looking at my little alfalfa sticking up, I got so excited, my hair just stands up when I talk about us exercising our civil right and our civic duty. When people say you're not going to vote, then I ask them, well, what about everybody that died fighting for this right? Lynched, poll tax, literacy test. What about our ancestors? Everybody want to talk about for the ancestors. Okay, then you do something for the ancestors. What about the brothers and sisters that got their right to vote back? We need to make sure that they exercise that. But also, we need to show leadership as a community. Everybody looks to us. What are we going to do? We have to make sure that people have to come out to vote. Also, Ed, Mark, and all the brothers up here, Khalil, all the brothers, we cannot let someone separate us from our brothers. We don't say, well, I'm not voting for her. You're not voting for us. You're not voting for her. You're voting for us, our communities. What we need. See, there is a plan. And they've already said what the plan is. And what they're hoping is we don't turn out the vote. We must overwhelmingly vote. So we must bring our IDs. We must, and if you can legally, come and bring somebody else. Our lives depend on this. We've already had this before. And now if they get it back, they're going to do more things. And I'm going to say this, and don't get mad at me, Brother Moriel, but if you are Haitian, for what they said about the Haitians, I need all my Haitian brothers. Say la boule, I need you to vote. We have got to vote, and we are the leaders. They follow our culture, then follow us to the polling place.
Mark, with about a minute left, people have heard about Project 2025, and they have a vague idea of what it is. And sometimes in my business, we have been saying over the last couple of elections, oh, it's the most consequential of your lifetime. And sometimes that becomes cliche and people stop hearing it. But Project 2025 has changed the dynamic, has it not?
It's a dangerous plan put together by an ultra conservative think tank called the Heritage Foundation, 900 pages. And it's a plan to take the American democracy and turn it into an American monarchy. Repeal and shut down the Department of Education, shut down the EEOC, ban diversity, repeal the Civil Rights Act, repeal the Voting Rights Act. This is what Project 2025 entails, and triple taxes on Americans making under $75,000 a year. These are some of the ideas contained in Project 2025. It is the agenda of the far right, which seeks to turn the hands back. If you can get through 900 pages, I submit you don't even have to get through 900 pages. This plan is public, and it is a clear and present danger to the America we all want to build. So it does a number of things. It's an extremist plan. One thing I want you to remember, it is about installing a monarchy. No more civil service protection for government employees. You could come in and fire them at will for no reason or any reason. So let's be aware that there's an agenda, and that agenda does not include the best interests of the majority of Americans, including Black Americans, but not just us, but broad communities. It is I call the plan a piece of rubbish, and it's an insult to our intelligence and our knowledge of this constitutional democracy.
And to your point, people aren't going to get through, most people, 900 pages, but there are Cliff Notes versions of what is there. Just do, as Cheryl said, your due diligence. Let me thank both of you for having the conversation and moving to action and not just stopping it there. I thank you both for your time this evening. Greatly appreciated. Now let's turn our attention to the all-important young people's vote. With us now, entrepreneur, author, and media personality, Lauren Speed Hamilton, and rapper, political activist, and motivational speaker, Yella Payne. Thank you for joining us, both of you. Lauren, let me start with you, if I can. You know, so much is made about young people, and I, as old as I am now and gray, I get tired of people acting as though young people come here all of a sudden with different DNA. You know, we're all the same. We were young once, us old folk can understand. What do you think needs to be said and done to motivate those who are yet to see the importance of it?
Oh, wow. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation. I think that young voters really need to understand how much their voices truly matter. And the fact that each election is an opportunity to really shape the future that we want to see. Our future. I mean, we're talking about issues that directly affect us, from climate change, student loan debt, affordable healthcare, jobs. I mean, even things like fundamental rights. And these aren't just things that are abstract ideas. This is real life stuff that will affect our everyday. And honestly, you know, if we don't participate, we're essentially letting someone else make those decisions for us. So there's a lot at stake. And you know, what's really at stake is our ability to have a say in policies that will affect our lives, our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives for years to come. So it's really crucial that we get out, we reclaim our power and our time, by making sure that we're registered, educated on the issues, and show up to vote.
Yeah, Yella Payne, let me start with you, brother, and ask you this. You know, we saw a lot of young people in the streets during Black Lives Matter, protesting, making real difference, pushing police and organizations. Do you think that the connection has been made in terms of what voting can do to help that along? If not, how do we make that connection?
I think, to start off, one of the biggest ways to make the connection is education. It has to be practical. And when you look at, like, 2020, that was like the biggest voter turnout in 120 years, right? And that was because the young people were passionate about something. You know what I mean? They were extremely passionate. They in the streets, they marching. That's the biggest voter turnout, but it's also the biggest protest in history. Like if you look through history, there was no bigger protest than the year 2020, and also the biggest voter turnout. So what does that tell you? That young people, there's other ways to get involved and get engaged in the political process. There's protesting. Right now, our influence is so much bigger than it ever has been, especially with social media. You got young people, even me, right? A lot of like my song, My Vote Don't Count is the reason why I'm probably even in this room to start off with. And I was 25 at the time that I made that song. I made that song and it resonated so much for multiple reasons. One, because I was breaking down the process, but also because I was young and young people resonated with me. So as young people, we need to educate each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me ask you this. When you were younger, did you always have a political slant, or did you feel like this thing doesn't matter to me, voting doesn't matter, politics doesn't matter? If so, what brought you to the table and saw that it worked?
Oh yeah, I was completely on the other side. I'm being honest. Like I was so on the other side because I had voted for Obama in 2012. And you know, at the time, I thought that that was going to change my life. You know what I mean? Like, I was very young, fresh, you know what I mean, into the political thing. And, you know, I just believed everything that I saw on the media. I didn't know it was anybody else really in government necessarily. I just knew what I was, you know, what I was fed through the media. And I was fed that Obama would change the quality of my life. You know what I mean? When things didn't change, I felt like, you know, just like a lot of young people, that the political process, voting, it doesn't really ever actually affect us. What happened was I had a cousin who was running for Congress, and she asked me one of the most important questions that anybody has ever asked me and that you can ask a young people, and that is, what are some things that you want to see change? She asked me, what are some things that you want to see change? I started to list them. I was talking about the potholes. I was talking about people. I got friends that's incarcerated that got years and years in jail for crimes that don't necessarily warrant them doing that much time. You know what I mean? As I'm listing these things, she's breaking them down into people that I've never heard of. She's telling me about state reps. She's telling me about the city council. She's telling me that there is an infrastructure bill that can be passed that can get the roads fixed. She's telling me about the school board and how the education for the kids and even what they eat in school, the cafeteria lunch, from the trash pickup, all of these different things that I had never even been notified about. Once she told me that, it made me realize, oh, well, oh snap! Like this is not voting is irresponsible. You know what I mean? At this point, like, and I thought I had a choice, but not voting is voting for whoever wins. You know what I mean? So now I understand that it's an irresponsible decision. And I think once the rest of the young people realize that not voting is irresponsible and actually voting has a direct impact on their lives beyond the president, I think we'll get so much more of a turnout consistent.
Hey, Lauren, let me ask you this because he brings up an interesting point when he talked about Obama. And sometimes we look at this and assume that if you get that right person, your entire life is going to change. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't take you from poverty to being rich. That's not going to happen. But even though you may not see it, there's legislation that is put in place that will help you. How do you convince young people that even though they don't see connect the dots, there will be a huge difference in a Kamala Harris presidency and a Donald Trump presidency, a huge difference?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's about, really making sure that the world that we're living in reflects us. It has to reflect our values, our needs. It should be diverse. It should be willing to change and all about change. And I feel like if we don't step up and use our voice and really become a part of those conversations, then the system doesn't change and we risk being left out of the conversation, excuse me. And, I just think that it's important that we really step up, be a part of those conversations, because like I said, we are directly affected. And it may not feel like, okay, if I just go out and vote, then, it's not going to make a big deal. But it is a huge deal because together, collectively, we can really create the change that we want to see. And voting is the most direct way to make that happen.
Yeah, I listen. I thank you both for getting out there, and I think what Yellow Pain said is you've got to make your voice heard once you cast your vote. You can't just vote and then walk away. You have to let those know, particularly if your candidate wins, that you want to now be paid back for your vote. I thank you both. Greatly appreciate it. Good to have you here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, now I think we are going to turn our attention to a couple of ladies that are important to all of what we do. The history of why women must vote is long. And I believe we have them on joining us now to discuss the Black women's vote and why that block is so powerful. I see one of them there. And you know this young lady because she's a Grammy Award winner and a philanthropist. That is Estelle. And
Hi,
we're also, hi, how are you, Estelle? Good to see you.
great
We're
to
also
see
going
you.
to be joined by award-winning actress, author, and a lady who, well, you know how she feels. She'll be up with us in just a minute. Jennifer Lewis is going to be with us. But Estelle, let me start with you and talk about immigration, if you will,
Yeah.
because one of the things that is of import, we should note that you were not born here.
No.
And so I'd like you to talk about what you are seeing, what you're hearing, and why it's so important to stand up.
Well, my experience with immigration, obviously, everyone knows I'm not from here, I'm from London. I've been here for maybe 10 years before I applied for my immigration. And I came right before President Obama was elected. It was a joyful time. It didn't feel, I never really felt any of the pressures that we would go on to feel. Um, you know, when the other guy took power. But when he got into office, I should say, when he got into office, it just kind of got extremely urgent for me. I was like, where will I be in the world? Where am I going to stay? And I ended up going for my citizenship. The process, when people talk about immigration, no matter how much you have, no matter what it is, the process is extremely difficult. I had a lawyer on the phone every day. I had a lawyer catching paperwork that was sent after the fact. Like, just every possible thing you could think of was coming at me. And
Yeah.
while I was going through this process, I just considered the fact that some people don't have a lawyer, and some people don't have access, and some
It,
people don't have the people to help them get through it the way that I
is
did.
it frightening what you hear of late? You know, so many people talking about Springfield, Ohio, and
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
Haitians and the
yeah,
and the racial intolerance and vitriol we heard.
yeah.
Tell me how that signaled to you as
It's
someone who came.
enraging. It's
Yeah.
enraging. And I'm a black woman from London. I'm West Indian. I'm African. I was born in London. My parents were born in West Indies in Africa. It just kind of feels like the stories they would tell me that my grandma experienced when she came over. It feels like the stories they would tell me, all of those things that to me, we were done with that, right? That wasn't going to be a thing again, right? And then to hear it in 2024 was just like, you
Yeah.
cannot be serious. It
Scary.
just, everything was just like brought back to the front. But I actually ended up becoming a citizen in the period where he was the president. And it just felt so just yuck to even have to do the Pledge of Allegiance
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
at the time. But I do know this, when it comes to, it made me double down on wanting to make sure that I was active. I was speaking to people. I was letting people know the process of immigration, and people who were coming over. Like, I have friends who've come over who have broken down, like, yeah, no, absolutely go for your citizenship. Make sure there's a certain amount of voting, just ease that's allowed there. They sign you up immediately, registered to vote immediately. And I did it in the state of California, so it's slightly different than every other state.
Let
Um,
me
yeah,
if I may, get my girl in here as I
yeah,
see she's on camera. Miss Jennifer Lewis joins us now, and she is someone who I've known for a number of years now. But I will tell you, she's always been on the forefront first. Let me say, hey, girl, how you doing? So
Hey
good to
Ed, how
see
you
you.
doing?
I'm doing well. You
I'm
know,
good.
Jennifer, let me ask you about why you have steadfastly been out front, particularly for women's issues.
Here's the thing, My expertise is working with the millennials and the Gen Zs because of what I did on TV, the aunt, mother, and now the grandmother. I have that bond. But who I want to go after now, I'm telling you guys right now, I have been working with We Care, We Vote, the NAACP volunteers, Black Women in Entertainment for Kamala Harris. We had an auction the other night with another organization. We raised $20,000. You know, I was cussing everybody out and making them bid and carry on. And I'm heading down to Atlanta with Stacey Abrams and all of them for 3 days to get on the bus and go door to door. Guys, I am working. I am on the front line. People ask me why. Because I care. Because I owe. Because I do know the ancestors, because I went over to South Africa and sat on Mandela's bed. I was appalled that they let me in there because that meant that anybody with money could go in there. But I sat on his bed and I told him, I said, all I want to ask you is help me to have the courage to make you proud with the rest of my life. So baby, I have come back, and now that Kamala Harris has stepped up, I am on the front line. I was on the front line anyway, because I care. Now, here's the thing. I want to go after the brothers. After Don Lemon went on his tour across country, and so many young guys would just go, he said, who you voting for? Oh man, I'm voting for the man, Trump. Well, what I got to tell them, and I'm writing a song about it right now, this is not about gold gym shoes and another stimulus check. This is about that evil knee that was on George Floyd's neck. You know, like, you know, there's not going to be any
Yes, sir.
immunity for prosecution if that fool wins and they shoot our boys in their backs. There will be no justice. They're talking about a totalitarian state. That's what that document is all about. So we're talking about, I'm going to go after the brothers. I'm going to pull on their heartstrings. I'm going to say, listen, if that precious niece of yours has a back alley abortion and she dies in your arms in the back seat of a car from infection, and once you even get her to the hospital, they're not going to be able to help her. So what are you doing? So I'm going for that emotional side of these kids. Come here. What are you doing?
Yeah, let me ask you both with about a minute left, the idea of doing something, and Estelle, I'll start with you. Jennifer touched on it, doing something extra. You know, sometimes we say, oh, well, I went to vote, but to Jennifer's point of getting out there, getting on the road, I always say, if you have money, send money. You know, if you have wisdom, give the wisdom. And if you fool, just stay out of the way. Do something that will help us. So Estelle, what would you suggest in relation to that?
I was at a panel the other day, and I'll take this because this is literally what I've been doing, and I'll say this. You know somebody in your room, in your space, in your house, in your network that needs the information, that is battling, that is on the fence. Go and talk to that person. Do not allow them to sit there just regurgitating information and leaving that as the thought so they can kind of coast past it. No, be the person that's the wall and that holds them accountable. That's what I've been doing with all of my friends. Here's the information. Oh, you didn't know how to respond to that person that said some dumb shit. Here's the information. Tell them this next time. You know what? Go back up and start the conversation up again. Be that person, because that's, to me, is the only way we can talk about this. We can have panels ad nauseum, but the actual work lies in talking and speaking.
And that person,
yeah,
and that person, Estelle,
yeah,
goes to the community center to
Yes.
see if any of the elders need a ride to the polls.
that too.
And that person that thinks about the caretakers themselves
Mhm.
that go into the hospitals, help these people fill out absentee ballots, actually be active,
There. Yeah.
be proactive, do what Michelle Obama said, do something. And like you said, Ed, whether it's a spiritual thing, whether it's going to people in the church and saying, listen, do you want your grandchildren to have air to breathe? Because these people are not going in for science and climate change. I could tell you a story. I was in Antarctica. The captain of the ship took only me because they don't want to destroy everybody's vacation. Took only me to see where that ice, where the water has come down. He asked me, he said, Miss Lewis, I know you're a celebrity, but as an activist, I will ask you to go back to your country and tell whoever will listen. We are, in fact, in trouble.
Yeah.
The Arctic is melting at the speed of light. We
And Jennifer, I
cannot
know
let
you saw it. I was in Alaska, and you literally see just the ice falling into the sea.
Absolutely.
It's a frightening thing.
Absolutely.
Listen,
Real life.
let me thank you both for not only being on tonight, but what you're doing. So many people talk about doing, and they'll do something like this, but when you say, yeah, but where are you in the streets? They're not there. And I know both of you are there, and we thank you for that.
For sure.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, good to
Thank
see
you.
you. All right,
Bye.
so this is what we want to do now. We want to tell you about a poll, and we should note, just for clarity's sake, that the National Urban League is nonpartisan. The views you'll hear tonight, whether they be about a candidate or about a direction, are those of the individuals. We should say that the Urban League, again, is nonpartisan, but they also believe it is of import that we bring you these kinds of discussions. And to that end, we want to hear from you. We're taking a poll. We have 3 questions for you. We're going to give you the results at the end of the program, but here are the 3 questions. Do you know where your polling place is? Do you know where your polling place is? Sometimes one might say, particularly if you're a little long in the tooth and have voted for years, well, of course I do, but you should note that polling places do move. So you want to make sure, particularly if you're going to vote on that day, that you don't show up to the wrong place. Secondly, are you planning to bring a friend or a family member to vote with you? Are you planning to take someone with you? Jennifer just mentioned that, the idea of getting out, and Estelle talked about pushing those people who may not be as educated, getting them informed and involved. And finally, have you voted in every election since you were of age? That's an important question, because what happens is those that tend to do that tend to, in fact, make sure, come hell or high water, that they get to cast their vote. So have you voted in every election? Are you bringing a friend or a family member to vote? And do you know where your polling place is? Those are the 3 questions. All right. We thank Estelle and Jennifer, and now we want to turn our attention to Black men. The Black male vote this time around has been talked about more than any other time that I can remember, partially because a lot of the media and the polling is suggesting that Black men, as Jennifer alluded to, may be, in fact, voting for Trump in disproportionate numbers. But the question is whether Black men are going to, in fact, be involved in voting at all. Joining us now, Khalil Thompson, Executive Director of Win with Black Men, social and equity justice warrior, and host, it says here, and my man, my Detroit brother.
That's right.
Judge Greg Athens. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Greg, we're gonna have to put on our best behavior, because usually we clowning when we the camera.
Well, good to see you again, and let's try and keep it as formal as we can.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Talk for 2 boys from Detroit.
Let me start with you, man. In relation to what we're hearing about, Black men being disenfranchised, I'm a little bothered, and I have been pushing my brother in the media to stop necessarily pushing that narrative. I think it is quite frankly a little insulting to assume that Black men, because of a gold gym shoe or stimulus check, would just run to one side or another, or that we're unable to see how important this is. Give me a sense of how you're feeling.
Yeah, I feel that most of our brothers who may perhaps have been undereducated, underserved in most of our communities, and lack the critical analysis training that it takes to kind of understand what's really going on. I think they're just misinformed, because if you as a brother believe that Donald Trump is better for you, your family, or otherwise than a progressive agenda from Democrats, which would put money in your community. For example, under Trump, they cut 42% of the HUD budget, housing that's paid for to house women with children, when many of our brothers are unable to. They also, with regard to the Biden administration, they put $3 trillion into the economy, an infrastructure bill that hires those who aren't even skilled labor, the climate change bill, which was also another 900 million, and then lately our Inflation Reduction Act. So the administration has put a lot of money into our communities, but we're going for the con. And I'm just shocked that our brothers will be conned so easily. You know, we're running a headquarters out of our community center in Detroit, the Mathis Community Center, and, you know, we're down on the ground. And you're right, those brothers are disproportionately supporting him, but it's not because necessarily the gym shoes and the other insults about having a criminal record or a mugshot. It's really because they've been conned into believing that this super macho, business-oriented man is the one that they need to go to. They identify with him other than his success.
Khalil, let me ask you this. In relation to what I think a lot of it is about, is there a lot of Black men who feel disenfranchised and unseen, and therefore they don't see politics as something that is of import to them because they haven't seen it help? Do you find that?
Yes, and I would agree with you. And I appreciate following a great brother like Judge Mathis to be behind. And thank you to Mark and the National Urban League for being here. Again, nonpartisan perspective. And Ed, I would, again, co-sign on what you were saying. Let's not talk about the things that we know are red herrings, that we know are not about our community. I don't think we need to discuss them, because the more that we do, the more that we give life and speak into it. What I find from brothers, like we were at Mike T's in Clinton Township in Detroit. We'll be back there on Friday. So anybody that's out can come and join us. But we find that Black men want to talk to, they want a conversation about how they can improve themselves in their communities. They want to learn what they can do to better protect their partners, whether it's the healthcare options, how they, and why I think they choose to go for another option outside of one particular party is because for whatever reason, they believe that other party is speaking to them about economics. They're speaking to them about what government opportunities they can find in contracting and procurement, what they can find in their own destiny and choosing that for themselves. And if we make this about those issues, not about the superficial, we don't need to talk about gym shoes or rap sheets, but if we literally talk about what's in the benefit for why this is going to improve a Black male's life, how it's going to be, and they can find that transitory relationship, I think they're more inclined to then vote. We're not going to get muddled down into necessarily all of the deep policy decisions. We know there is a litany that we've seen out of this current administration. But if we can relationalize this to the point that they can go back to their brothers in the shop, on the block, or just in their own neighborhoods and share with them why this election is important, whether you're in Brooklyn, New York, or Oklahoma, I think that's going to be more beneficial than discussing some of the other ancillary things that came up earlier.
And Khalil, isn't it important for brothers to talk to brothers, you know, on a level that isn't necessarily in a political forum? You know, we tease about the barbershop, but I don't think we've done enough of that in helping connect those dots.
Agreed. I mean, we know the barbershop for many of us, I'm sure Ed and Judge Mathis and others, it is our country club. It's where, as Cedric said, it's where we go, whether it's once a week, twice a week, or once a month, to get that shape up, that lineup, and just have a conversation. I know there are other groups out there, and many of us are doing this engagement this cycle and have before, to find those places that we know we're going to come to often and just have an intimate and casual conversation. It's not about, again, talking about the deep nuances of policy. It's finding how that on a personal connection, you can connect with a brother and say, look, forget all this other stuff. What do you think at the end of the day is going to be the benefit add for you? You have the opportunity with your vote to make a hiring decision. It's literally you going in. You're the boss. You can determine who you want to hire to be your elected official at the end of the day. You can hire them, rehire them, or fire them. And I believe we should
to a
give
great degree, you're a
promotion.
general manager. I mean,
Yes,
you
you're a
know,
general
I try to use a sports analogy for that. You are a general manager. You're going to decide who you trade, who you keep, who you pay, who you cut. Greg, let me ask you, with about a minute to go, give me a sense of what has worked best for you? Because I know you talk to a lot of brothers. Again, you are back home here in Detroit. I know you do it out in LA and you travel the country. What has worked best for the guy, the brother that started out not listening, not hearing, but once you kind of open that door, what dialogue has worked best to do that?
Challenging him, challenging the brothers, letting the brothers know policy over personality. And I do talk about the policies that affect them. And that is, in this case, the vice president has proposed a $25,000 business startup. Trump had 4 years. He did nothing for Black business and nothing for Black men going into business. So I call them suckers. I call them chumps. I tell them they're being conned. And then once I open their eyes with the policies that I'm referring to, because I'm speaking their language. I only speak this to folks that I'm right there with. Can't go and speak this to everybody. But I challenge them. And then I ask them, you going to be suckers for your family? Are you going to punk out? Or are you going to go ahead and vote for a sister, put your chauvinism down, put your super macho down, vote for the sister who has supported us, who is like your mother, who is like your sister, who is like your niece. And that's how I appeal to them, with a challenge.
Yeah, and Khalil, lastly, we should note, because sometimes we always talk about, you know, the favorite Pookie Ray Ray thing, but there are a lot of middle-class Black folk who don't always do what they should do either.
Very true. No, we find, and what we're trying to do on Women Black Men is bring more brothers that are not just Ivy League educated, didn't go to a 4-year or 2-year degree. We want your journeymen, your tradesmen, your union, your labor workers that are out there every single day. The brother that drives the bus every single day is just as important as the brother that's in the CEO suite. We want to make sure, just as Judge Mathis says, they understand the policy and the nuance, and then make the decision that is best for them in their community. At the end of the day, as my pastor, Howard John Wesley, say, I can't tell you necessarily who to vote for, but I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris because I believe she is the best choice for our community and for Black men.
Khalil Thompson, Greg Mathis, thank you, brothers, both for joining us on this. And we should note, you know, we know all of this is very quick, but this is just the light of the match. You've got to light the flame, and we're just trying to give you something to think about as we move on. Thank you both. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
All right. Now, we're going to turn our attention to get a little time to educate, if you will. There are a lot of people who are out on the ground registering people to vote, trying to get an understanding of some topics that may be out of reach for some. We've got 3 young ladies who many of you are going to be familiar with, and they are out on the front lines. Stephanie Brown James, co-founder of the Collective PAC, social strategist and co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Latasha Brown, and social justice leader and co-founder of Until Freedom, Tamika Mallory. They all join us and greatly appreciate it. Latasha, let me start with you, if I may. You know, you've been on the ground and doing a lot over the course of the last couple of elections. Give me a sense of what you see and feel that's different about this one, beyond just the truncated time we have now from when Ms. Harris came in. But what's different?
I think there's a couple of things that are different. One, I'm happy to be on here with my sisters on the front lines at doing this work and to be in this conversation. I think there are a couple of things that are different. The first thing I would say that's different is that there is a pathway of hope that opened up. That part of what I felt is that people were feeling a sense of hopelessness or feeling a sense of just frustration. And it seemed like in some ways, and I think the media has been a part of this process, making it seem that the former president is larger than life, that ultimately like he was undefeatable, that you couldn't defeat him, that he was, you know, all of these pieces. Not necessarily that I think that our community believed it, but our community in some ways felt like we're seeing the stripping of affirmative action, we're seeing these attacks on Black history, all of those things, they add into this idea of feeling this sense of powerlessness that ultimately feeds into this idea of hopelessness. And so I think part of what you saw in terms of this shift that happened in the campaign and momentum is that there was this pathway of hope that opened up. It's kind of like I always say, if you take a little light just a little light and put it in a dark room, it will change the character of the room. And so part of what people saw, it did, I think Black folks are very practical. I don't think they saw that this was our, like, the saving grace or somebody's coming to save us on a horse. But I think that all we wanted to see was a little space of opening of hope. And that we knew that part of, I remember when it happened, my niece, who had been asking for years to actually help work with me or volunteer with me. Matter of fact, she was almost on the piece that she said she wasn't even gonna vote. That when it happened, she called me and said, Auntie, I want to work. I want to do something. I want to volunteer, right? So there's something shifted. And I think that's the power of hope, that anytime that we open up a space of hope, it creates people to really reimagine kind of possibilities. And so I think that that's what's different. And we've been seeing that momentum has continued to stay alive on the ground. We've seen more people volunteer. We've seen more people participate. And so that's what I've been noticing happening.
It really moved as a light switch. I was just in Ohio over the weekend giving a speech. And everyone that I talked to said the moment that change happened, there was a light inside of them, an energy that came. And Stephanie, I'm going to turn that into what Latasha just talked about, and that is momentum. The one thing that, no matter who you're voting for, this truncated sense of an election really allows the momentum to move quicker, and you get to that day much quicker, meaning election day. Give me a sense of what you're seeing, because if we're honest, there are some worries about whether this momentum will continue through the election.
Well, let me tell you, Ed, I'm actually not concerned about the momentum, because the momentum has been working since Black people set foot in this country. We are nothing but momentum. We are nothing but surviving the odds. We are nothing but thriving when folks don't even think we can survive. I am so grateful to be on here with my sisters, Latasha and Tamika, because they have been doing this work, as many of us have been doing this work across the country. And that is important to say in the context of what's happening now, because nothing that we see now is new in reality. Energy can be renewed, but this is not a new way of us organizing. We have simply taken the baton that has been given to us from our ancestors, from those who have laid the foundation, and just pushed the baton forward. So I'm just grateful that we have an opportunity now as organizers and these are Black women that lead organizations, that are in sisterhood with other Black women that lead organizations, Black men that lead organizations. Having white folks that have money that lead organizations give it to us because we know what to do in our communities. That is important because it's going to take the grassroots efforts to turn our communities out to vote. It is our ground game that has been sustained over the years that needs to continue to be put in place and activated. And so I have, as Latasha said, I have all the hope in the world, because if there's something that Black folks do well, we organize, we depend on our communities to turn out, and we understand how significant it is for us to have our voices and our vote heard in this election.
Mika, let me see if I can continue that thread, if you will. We're down to about 6 states because of the Electoral College. So if you take Georgia, Atlanta, Michigan, Detroit, Pennsylvania, Philly, Milwaukee, and Wisconsin, this sense of getting to 270 can be won or lost with simply those states and those cities doing large turnout. Talk to us about the importance of that. Put your mic on. Put your mic on.
Sorry, you would think I would realize how to work the damn thing at this point, right? I love my sisters as well. And 2 of you are my sheroes, and also you, Ed. Thank you so much for being so consistent with us. The ground game is so important. And, it scares me that there are some people out here who believe that because the candidate that we support the most, and, obviously in this space, people have the right to vote for whoever they want, but I know my candidate, who happens to be an AKA, excuse me, just for those
Go ahead.
But anyway, I think that some people believe that because of momentum, because of excitement, and because of the fact that she is a Black woman, that will translate to votes. It does not. What translates is us getting on the ground, knocking on every door, talking to everybody. We got to talk to Pookie, Ray Ray, TT, everybody. We have to make sure that we're at the nightclubs, the strip clubs, the street corners, everywhere that folks need to be to feel engaged. And I have to be honest in saying that the investment in us being able to do that is not where it needs to be, even at 30 days out. It is an actual scary thing for me because I am talking to people on the ground across this country, small grassroots organizations who are saying we're doing what we can, but we can't get on buses and organize our people to get to other cities if we don't have the resources that we need to be able to do that. And I hope that what comes out of this is if there's someone who is listening who says, you know what, wow, I didn't know that was an issue. Let me donate $250, $10, $20, whatever you have to small groups that are in those cities, and also groups like Until Freedom. While we may live in New York, we're hardly ever home because we spend our time in cities across the country where we're needed. Last, year, we worked on the race, the governor's race in Kentucky, following up what happened to Breonna Taylor, when she was murdered there, and we know that there was no justice, and the person who was responsible for getting her justice, in the Attorney General at that time, Daniel Cameron, was unable to secure justice for her and then tried to run for governor. And we went back. We didn't just do the protest in the summer of 2020. We went back 4 years later and ensured that he did not win and beat Andy Beshear in that race. That's the type of work that we need to be replicated across this nation, that it is not just a protest movement, but it is also a real grassroots operation to take our people, all our people, to the polls and allow them to understand how they can actually engage. And I know that you may ask another question, but in case I don't get a chance to speak, we also have to understand that misinformation is something that we are fighting against. It is a wind that is coming towards us, that our Black men, I'm so glad you had that conversation with the Black men. That is a problem for our brothers. I have to field conversations every single day with our men, making sure they have the talking points that they need. I have to give a shout out to my brother, my son, our brother Angelo Pinto, and also Plies, and a number of brothers who are online just dealing with misinformation every day. I am still a believer that you can go on the internet, you can make a few phone calls, and I know Latasha understands this more than anybody here. You can do all of that, but you have to knock on people's doors. You got to pull up on them, as they say, on the streets, and make sure that they can have those conversations and know that someone cares about their communities, no matter how disadvantaged they may be.
And I want to give each of you, with about literally a minute for each of you, just give a marching order. And I will say, Tamika, the idea of misinformation, because I fight this with my brethren in the media, sometimes it's not intentional misinformation, it is still misinformation. And there are a lot of media narratives that run because somebody else said it, then the next network takes it, the next. I had a fight last night after the debate about something. And so we need to be vigilant on all fronts. So let me start with you, Stephanie, just a marching order, if you will.
Yeah, my marching order is don't forget the down ballot. The folks that you will probably engage with are going to be your city council members, your school board members. We're talking about banning books. The state legislature is the one that is originating a lot of that policy work. And so just make sure you are knowing who is running for office, that you're talking to them, you're holding them accountable, but you're also voting. And then lastly, everyone can do something by just starting at home. So the 10 folks that you are closest to and the 10 folks in your family that you never talk to, it is your job this election to make sure that they are not only registered to vote, but that they have a plan of what they're going to do on election day, early voting on day of, mail-in ballot, whatever it may be.
And I said this earlier for down ballot, even if you're in a state that they're telling you is going the other way, you can impact and affect that down ballot, not just locally, not just statewide, but possibly federally in the Senate and in the House. Latasha, go ahead.
I think that is important for people to recognize that election is not just about participation, it's really about power. So we got to shift this paradigm. This is really about power. And so there are a couple of things that, one, we have to really realize that when people come at our communities, there has to be consequences. You can't align yourself with white nationalists and that goes unanswered. You can align yourself with destroying affirmative action and trying to take away from us, and there's not a consequence. So I think it's really important for us to center that this isn't just about participation, it's about power. The second thing is it's extremely important that we invest in our power building, that organizations like Collective PAC, who has supported progressive candidates, have been doing the work, supporting organizations, write a $20 check, a $100 check, a $50 check. You will be amazed at how much it means to organizations, grassroots groups. I think about Until Freedom, like grassroots groups that are doing this work, that to be able to get resources. So you can do something. And the third and the final thing I would say, I think it's really important for us to really recognize that we've got to amplify our power. So you got to take 10 to win. So yes, you got your one vote. I'm quite sure that anybody that's tuned on to this is going to vote already. You should be responsible for 10 people. What I have found most important is that oftentimes we don't ask the people around us to vote. And so make a list of 10 folks and just ask them to vote, get them to check their status on vote.org, and let's do this. Let's spread love and build power.
Yeah, and I remind people, Election Day should not be your last day of participation in the political system. It should actually be your first day. Tamika, give us something to close out with.
You took my point that after the election, I hope that you will meet me on the streets of America, because I will be protesting, organizing, and shouting from some street corner about our issues. I want our people to know that we will not stop organizing. You do not have to feel like once this election is over that, oh, everybody's going to leave us. No, there are some of us who are still actively engaged on the issues of gun violence, on dealing with food deserts, on dealing with housing insecurity. We are still here for you, and we want you to be engaged with us so that you can feel like an election is one tool. It is one part of a process, and that you can continue to fight for and advocate for your issues. And the last thing I will say is don't listen to, I'm not saying the polls don't matter, but they are smart people. I always say that people like Stephanie, those are my smart friends. So they follow polls, they pay attention on it. I hear them because I have a smart half of my brain that listens to that, but the other side just focuses on turnout. It focuses on organizing. I'm not worried about what the polls are saying. They can tell you that she's down, he's up, all of that. Right now, we have to have an overload of people. The numbers need to be overwhelming. And so if we're going to do anything, don't worry about what Tamika Mallory does. Yeah. Don't worry about who's the best speaker, the best advocate. You go out and be that in your local community, because nobody, not even me, I can't even go to your community and organize you the way that you can with the people that you know.
Absolutely. Ladies, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all that you do. And this is not new to you. As you said, you all have been out there. Greatly appreciated. Okay. Now, we want to give people an opportunity to understand just some quick thoughts on strategy and what we should be doing and what, more importantly, you should know. Joining us now, Senior Vice President for Equitable Justice and Strategic Initiatives at the National Urban League, Jericka Richardson joins us. Jericka, you want to share some things with the folks who are tuned in here.
Thank you, Ed, and good evening, everyone. I'm Jericka Richardson from the National Urban League. I must say this has been such a rich conversation. Well, we've heard from tonight's dynamic speakers about what's at stake in this election, especially for our community. And there is indeed so much power in our vote. And the message for me really is crystal clear that no matter who you are, whether you are a young adult, a man, a woman, an immigrant, or a member of any marginalized community, voting or failing to do so impacts all of our futures. So your voice is vital, not just for you, but for every single person you hold dear, every single person you care about. And so now really is our moment to use it. So I want to encourage all of you not to wait. It's critically important that we get involved, that we do the work, that we pay attention to what's going on. It's really critical that we take the necessary steps to ensure that our vote is counted, because we really understand that the time to act is now. And so you see, the window for voter registration is closing rapidly. And I want to emphasize that it's closing rapidly. Deadlines are approaching fast in many states, as early as next week, and in several others. We are watching those deadlines close as well. So even if you voted in the past, whether it was frequently or infrequently, please take nothing for granted. And so I really want to encourage you to check your registration status. And you can do that by visiting reclaimyourvote.org and making sure that you are registered and you're ready to go. You know, similarly, when we're talking about voter registration deadlines, early voting, that's around the corner. And so that's going to start ramping up very quickly. And so we are really giving you a great opportunity with early voting to cast your ballot early. You don't have to worry about long lines. This is an opportunity to get ahead of the game. It's an opportunity to avoid challenges that you might encounter at the polls if you wait longer. And so the goal is to always have a plan. And as we've emphasized over and over tonight, it's essential to make sure you know when, where, and how you're going to vote. Check your voting options, find your polling locations, know the candidates, know the issues, and most importantly, vote, vote, vote. Something else I really want to lift up, this is something that we've been focusing on here at the National Urban League, is next week, starting on October 7th through 11th, it is National Voter Education Week. And so we're celebrating this week. It's a great opportunity to educate folks in your communities, your families, go to school, just really make sure that your voice is heard. We want to make sure everyone is engaged and really ready to do this work. We're passionate about it here at the National Urban League, and we know you are too. And so we're just really excited for this opportunity. We thank you for being engaged. We thank you for joining us this evening. And we know that you're tuned in. It's just important that we make a difference. We are also encouraging you to volunteer with us. So follow us on social media and make sure you visit us at reclaimyourvote.org. Let's reclaim our vote, folks. We really need to do this work together. Back to you, Ed.
All right, Jerica, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. We're going to quickly get something from a young lady that you're all very familiar with, certainly a face that we've seen for many years. And Abbott Elementary is on its way back in a couple of weeks, and you will see her. Here's a message from actress Cheryl Lee Ralph.
Yeah, it is extremely critical that we exercise our right to vote. So please go vote. Vote because your life depends upon it. Your health depends upon it. Reclaim your vote and vote in this year's election so your voice is heard. Do not depend on someone else to decide for you. You go vote. That's right, you go vote.
That's my girl. She's always another one that's been out front in many social issues over the years and used her platform for that. All right. Poll results, as I promised. Do you know where your polling place is? 98% of you said yes. 98% of you said yes. But don't let that stop you from checking to make sure that it has not moved. Are you bringing a friend or family member to vote? 77% of you said yes. 77%. We'll see. And have you voted every election since you were eligible? 90% of you said yes. We want to thank you for joining us. Once again, I want to remind you that the National Urban League is nonpartisan, and any views that you heard this evening or representation of the candidate the individuals were supporting is that of that individual and not of the Urban League. We want to thank all of our guests who joined us this evening, a great array. And listen, we know that the segments were very quick, but as I said earlier, we're just trying to ignite a fire in you. For those of you who may not be as inclined to get out to vote, for those of you that will, we're encouraging you to do a little something extra. This is extraordinary, extraordinary. It's an extraordinary time we're in and a very important one. And trust me, it does matter who sits in that Oval Office. So big thanks to Mark Morial and Cheryl Underwood for all of this. And thank you so much for joining us. Good night.